Hardsuit Labs is shutting down the servers for its free-to-play multiplayer shooter Blacklight, Retribution. The studio intends to focus its attention on other projects, and will be turning off account migration today. Along with the game's official support site, the Blacklight servers will go dark on March 11th. Although the PS4 version will continue to operate as is there are no game servers being hosted for it. With the end fast approaching, Hardsuit has thanked fans for playing over the past 7 years, and starting today, has made all items in the PC Game Store free. Why is this happening? The reality is Hardsuit Labs has been engaged for some time now in some very interesting projects that require the full focus of the development teams and leadership, explained the developer. The studio capacity and resources are and have been entirely engaged with these projects and will be for the foreseeable future. As such, we officially will no longer be patching, updating, or doing technical support for Blacklight, Retribution. Swedish publisher Paradox Interactive purchased a 33% stake in Hardsuit in January last year, and agreed to publish the developer's upcoming project. We have not heard anything about the mystery games but it's possible the title is one of the interesting projects, Hardsuit mentioned. As games have evolved, so too have their characters. From simple to dual sprites, who were little more than placeholders to fully realized simulacrums of real people, with their own needs, motivations, and agendas. Crafting these characters is an art form, especially in a medium that requires you to fully construct and model them from scratch, clothe them in believability, and imbue them with human characteristics that make us empathize with or love them. The tremendous amount of effort that goes into drive Frankenstein a modern game character to life is rarely a solo effort, particularly on AAA projects, and usually requires the cooperation of multiple artists, writers, and designers, according to Chris Avelloni, a veteran designer and writer who's contributed to a huge number of heavily narrative and character-driven RPGs, from Planescape, Torment and Fallout, New Vegas to Divinity originals into. Building characters is often a democratic process, with a lot of input from multiple sources. It depends on the team, although it's usually very collaborative, which I prefer. Avelloni told me, the way I prefer to do it is get the game's calculus and systems first, get any parameters for the game and game story. For example, Fallout New Vegas has a lot of the same pillars and constraints as Fallout 3, which is important to know. Script out the basic story, add to it, then use characters to reinforce the gameplay, the theme, affection, or they can even be designed specifically to solve a story issue. I do not believe this man's concept originated from this, but the fact he could not be destroyed and kept coming back, since he was a robot, made him a perfect caregiver if you alienated everyone else, which is an important design choice than an important design role. From there, he prefers to begin by building the systems that will support a character, scaffolding like their class or race or abilities, and then flesh out a brief biography. With those elements in mind, I then present the bio and reference art to a concept artist, and see what they come up with. Note that concept artists have a lot of work to do. If they are designing someone representative of a faction, they need to know how that faction lives, how they survive, their philosophy, where they live, etc. So it can be a very involved process. Of course, the cooperative nature of designing with a large team means sometimes compromising your normal creative flow. Different projects have different standards and processes, and some of those might have already been established if you jump in midstream. Into the bridge, Justin and Matthew started with a sentence, Arthur, Ike, Hashant, Avalone says, and Polino Christova did the portraits. Then I came on with those in place. Matthew and I set up the points of reactivity for how and when the characters would respond, and I did writing based on both their look, scripting calls, and the summary, also taking into account what their powers were. Character system traits, I think, should be a strong factor in the design. Isaac's temporal reset ability in Into the Bridge definitely affected his character design, since his nervous system was always slightly out of sync. But the reason for creating a character can be anything, really. Hey, I think a genuinely nice, wise, celibate succubus would be fun to write. Became full from Grace in Torment. Dan Calvert, the character art director for Guerrilla Games, agrees that creating believable characters needs to be a collaborative process. Edgar Hill will rarely design anything in isolation, and characters are no exception. Calvert says, given that a lot of our art design work is in support of some other aspect of the game, the writing, the quest or combat design, a single character normally has a lot of stakeholders, and so feedback to them is pretty critical to making the design a success. That said, there is a sense of ownership of some characters for individual designers, though even those characters tend to grow and become fully realized in a cooperative environment. Characters who are central to the narrative, like Abed, Alvaro, normally emerge from a writer's brain fully realized, and it's our task to use art design to support that intent and communicate it to the player. Our concept artists are pretty awesome, so they have rightly earned a lot of trust from the rest of the studio to own the process. Normally a single artist will be responsible for a given character, but as the team is open and collaborative, it's common for other artists to contribute through feedback and idea generation. But the approach to feedback is to raise issues rather than propose solutions, and the character designer is trusted to solve those issues on their own initiative. For Carrie Patel, the narrative co-led on Pillars of Eternity Second, Deadfire, the ideal recipe for character design is a similar, hybrid approach, where objectives are established at a high level, but meeting those objectives is left to individual writers and designers. You can definitely end up with too many cooks in the kitchen, Patel points out, especially when it comes to writing a character. What generally works best is when the writer and the leads establish high-level goals together, generally about the content the EPI needs to point the player to and the high-level storytelling the team wants to accomplish with the EPI. Once those goals are established, the writer generally takes ownership of establishing the characterization and writing the dialogue. From there, they will iterate based on feedback from the leads and team, especially if some aspect of the character interaction is not clear or is not coming across as intended. Not unlike Avalone, Patel likes to be with a sense of the role a character is going to play in the larger narrative, and what the requirements of that character are. Some of the mechanical framework that then leads to more organic components like personality and backstory. I usually start with an understanding of what role the character is going to fill in the game, she explains. Most characters begin with a design goal. Is this a companion who's going to assist the player character over the course of the game? And if so, what's their class? Is it a quest giver? And if so, what's the gist of their quest? Or is it a flavor character who's highlighting a particular detail about the level or setting? Patel says, that from a basic premise, like a wounded space marine in mortal peril, a merchant recruiting the player to sabotage the competition. An archetype develops and then is populated by the little details that make characters feel real and unique. We will build a characterization that makes sense with the basic premise as well as the overall setting and tone, and that also gives the player character something interesting to play off of. Maybe the wounded marine does not think she needs to be rescued, which you can play up for either comedy or poignancy, depending on the tone. And maybe the conniving merchant frames his proposed sabotage in more virtuous terms, giving the player an opportunity to either engage or disagree with his perspective. Whatever we decide,